Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you a snare reverb trick for mixing big rock drums. So we're going to be trying to make our snare feel a little bit bigger today with some extra reverb. But before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and look at these drums and this snare drum in particular. Let me start by playing you the track as it sounds. So this is the finished mix here. Well, not the finished mix, because we're going to make some extra tweaks here. This is the mix as it stands currently. I want you to listen to how the drums currently sound, and then we're going to focus in on just the drums. So I will solo up just the drums so you can hear what they sound like by themselves. You'll hear the reverb that's on there, but in the track you'll hear how it gets absorbed by everything else, all the other instruments. So here's the mix as it stands right now. I've been waiting for the day to break, but I can't find it anymore. I've been struggling just to keep it at bay, but the longer I wait, the more I'll say it's hard enough. You can hear we've got some good room sound on our drums in isolation, but when we put it back inside the mix here, all that reverb that we have, all that room sound gets absorbed by the rest of the track. We've got a few electric guitars going on here, a pair of acoustics, a piano, some virtual strings here. That's a lot of stuff, and all of that's going to absorb that reverb that we have going on, and it's going to make the drums feel a little bit smaller and a little bit drier sounding. So we need something extra to help push that snare a little bit further so it has some length to it when he hits it in the mix. It'll make the drums feel a little bit bigger too. Now, I don't want to push our room sound any further as it is, because I don't want our kick to get too weird sounding, and I don't want our toms to get too weird sounding. Our toms sound pretty good as they are. We might throw a little bit of this extra reverb on them, but I don't want to push anything else that hard with the room mics. I could push the room mics even harder, but I'd get more cymbal noise, and I'd get more of that kind of mid-range sound on the kick drum, which I don't really want at this moment. I just want to get a little bit of length and a little bit of extra power out of our snare drum with some reverb. So what we're going to do is we're going to send to another reverb here. I'm going to come down here. I already have one set up here, but if I were to delete it, all we would have to do is create a new bus channel and then throw the room reverb on it, which is the stock reverb here inside of Studio One. I'm running the room reverb here. I like to run it on the medium studio setting. And you can use a reverb anywhere from usually about 500 milliseconds to a second. I like to sit right in the middle there at about 750 milliseconds. That usually works pretty well for me on the snare drum. And then after that, I just have an EQ here. Excuse me. And I usually like to keep it around 200 hertz here. We'll probably push it up a little bit further there to where I had it, because I don't want too much low end to come from the reverb. I want the low end to come from the actual source, from the actual snare drum, not from the reverb here. So we're going to pull this reverb down. We're going to listen to our drums here, and then we'll listen to just our snare drum as well. So that's that kind of explosive sound that I'm looking for from the reverb. We get a little bit of length, and it's like a nice blast when he hits the snare drum. You can see I pulled up the high pass filter following our reverb here, just so we don't have all that low mid energy. I don't want to hear so much of the fundamental from the snare drum. I kind of want to hear more of the top end and the mid-range sound from the snare drum. We might roll off some of the top end as well, but it's sounding pretty good to me at the moment there. All I did here was I sent from our snare drum to the medium studio reverb here, and I made sure the send level was at 0 because when I rolled up the high pass filter further, we lost some volume, we lost some energy on the snare drum there. That's it by itself. So I'm going to pull it back here. We're going to do one more time here with the drums as a whole. So I'm going to pull up this reverb now in conjunction with the reverb we already have going from our virtual room mic here. So now we're going to pull it up inside the entire drum kit and see what we get here. Right there, I'm starting to hear it. We can start to hear that tail a little bit. I'm going to leave it right here for the moment, and we're going to flip back into the rest of the track. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to mute our vocals for the moment because I don't want it clashing with the reverb from the vocals for the moment. I just want to focus in here on the drums and how the drums blend with the rest of the instruments here. We're going to leave it where it is for the moment. We'll mute and unmute it and see how it's sounding inside the track, see if it's making an impact where it's at, and then we'll pull it up if we need to get more of that length and more of that power from the snare drum. I noticed as I pulled it up further, we're getting a lot of hi-hat noise coming through too, a lot of cymbal noise. So I'm going to throw in this low-pass filter. We're at about 5K there, just rolling off some of that top-end noise. Let's sit it back here in the mix now. That's feeling a little bit better there to me. So all I did here was I made a couple adjustments on the actual reverb here itself. Rolled the low pass down a little bit further just so the hi-hat isn't so verbed sounding. I don't want that hi-hat bleed to be coming through so much in the reverb. And then I rolled the high pass filter up a little bit further too to make sure it doesn't get too muddy as we pulled up the reverb there. The other thing I did here was I switched to a more sparse section so we could actually hear that reverb in a softer section and make sure it's not too much in a softer section. and then getting absorbed by everything in the chorus there. So let's flip back to our chorus and check it one more time, and then we'll jump back and check it in our verse again. That's feeling pretty good to me there. So all we're doing here is stacking a little bit more room reverb on top of the room reverb we already have. So all of our drums here are sending into this room reverb here. So it's a room emulation verb. And we're pulling that up underneath all of our drums. So that's giving us some ambience across our drums, but we need a little bit more length and a little bit more smack on our snare drum just to emphasize that impact a little bit. So we're sending just our snare drum now to another reverb. This is just the medium studio reverb here inside of PreSonus Studio One. Any room reverb will work, just a medium-sized room. Like I said, I usually like to shoot for like 750 milliseconds or so. Reverb always works really great inside of Pro Tools as well. Then we're just following that reverb with an EQ and just honing in on that mid-range section. This here, from about 500 to about 3K, that's where you're going to get that nice mid-range impact on your snare drum coming from the reverb. It's going to give you that nice little explosion sound that you can kind of pull up under your snare drum to get that nice impact and the air and length that comes after it. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.